Good morning. Gerry Brinkman from BereanNation.com. Now, I was reading in my devotions this morning Judges chapter 17. First, let me say Judges is a difficult read. It can be a depressing book, and it's because the overarching theme of the book is found actually in verse 6 of this chapter, where it says, "In those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did what was right in his own eyes." So, it's just a horrible, horrible read. Some good things happen, some really hard things happen, some really gory, gross things happen. It's, but it's in Scripture and it's recorded as history for us so that we can learn, A, what to avoid, and B, how not to go down that road, I guess. And this particular chapter really struck me. I'm going to read the first few verses here. It says, "Now there was a man of the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Micah. He said to his mother, 'The 1,100 pieces of silver which were taken from you, about which you uttered a curse in my hearing, behold, the silver is with me, I took it.' And his mother said, 'Blessed be my son by the Lord.' Then he returned the 1,100 pieces of silver to his mother, and his mother said, 'I wholly dedicate the silver from my hand to the Lord for my son to make a graven image and a molten image. Now therefore I will return them to you.' So when he returned the silver to his mother took 200 pieces of silver, gave them to a silversmith, who made them into a graven image and a molten image, and they were in the house of Micah. And the man Micah had a shrine, and he made an ephod and household idols, and consecrated one of his sons, that he might become his priest." And it is in that context it says, "In those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did what was right in his own eyes." So, there's a lot of things that happened that were just wrong. And I want to say, this is reminiscent, I think, of the charismatic and word of faith movement and the NAR, that's New Apostolic Reformation, which isn't new, has no apostles, and isn't a Reformation. All of these things, they're done in the name of the Lord. Well, I wonder sometimes if the people that do these things in the name of the Lord have ever actually read their Bibles. Certainly this guy had no basic familiarity with what the Scriptures say. It says here in Exodus chapter 20, it says, Exodus chapter 20, it says in the very first commandment, "You shall have no other gods before me." So perhaps people think that he's getting around this by saying, well, I'm doing this in the name of the Lord. Well, then it says, "You shall not make for yourself an idol, or any likeness of what is in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the water under the earth. You shall not worship them or serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquities of the fathers on the children, on the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing loving kindness to thousands, to those who love me and keep my commandments." So, here he says, you shall not make for yourself an idol, and here's a guy making an idol in the name of the Lord. How is this in the name of the Lord? How is this right? Well, it's not really any different than all of these folks, and I hesitate to name names, but one of the particular bands I like a few songs from, because the songs I get from the Scripture, but their lifestyle and their theology, Jesus culture, I'm sorry. Great music, but leave the theology elsewhere, ladies, because that's just not how the Bible reads. Here it is. It's a contradiction, and I made some notes. I'm going to read from the notes. First, a graven idol was made. Okay. Now, then he presumes to make an ephod, which is something that only a priest can wear. He makes more idols, and he consecrates a non-Levite, because this is in the country of Ephraim. This is an Ephraimite. He consecrates a non-Levite to be a priest for what seems to be like his own private religion in the name of the Lord. How is this good? And yet somehow this is all spiritual and in the name of the Yad-Heh-Vav-Heh, Yahweh, Jehovah, however you want to pronounce the name. You can't do that. Truth matters, people. Now, later, he actually hires a Levite as a priest. He pays him his salary. He provides him clothing and upkeep. And here's really the key behind all this. It says in verse 13 of Judges 17 that Micah said, "Now I know that the Lord will prosper me, seeing as I have a Levite as a priest." It was all done in the name of his own personal prosperity. Does this sound familiar? I'm looking at you, Creflo Dollar. I'm looking at you, Jesse Duplantis. I'm looking at you, Ken Copeland. I'm looking at you, Jimmy Swaggart. All you wolves in sheep's clothing that want to just make this all about how if you become a Christian and you plant your seed of faith, which is your code for send me your money. No. Truth matters. And if truth didn't matter, then why do we have 66 different books filled with God's truth about how to come to Him, what the characteristics of the people of God are to be, and what's going to happen if we don't? You know, I've said it before in these posts, judgment begins at the house of God. If we're doing stuff like this in the name of the Lord, does that still make it right? No, it doesn't. Truth matters. I'm Gerry Brinkman. This is BereanNation.com. And I'm not always this angry, but when I see stuff like this, I go, how can you not get it? Time after time after time after time in Scripture, we see God's people, they don't get it, they do something to sin against the Lord, and the Lord delivers them into the hands of their enemies, visits them with great wrath and judgment, sends them into an Assyrian exile, sends them into a Babylonian exile, but because God will never leave himself without a people, brings them back from Babylonian exile. And they go away again right up to the time of Jesus. And then Jesus comes and brings a new covenant. And what do we see today? People doing stuff like this in the name of the Lord. You know, Jesus said that on that day, he's going to separate the sheep, the real followers, from the goats. And to the goats, he's going to say, "Depart from me, I never knew you." But those goats very interestingly say, "Wait a minute, did we not help the poor? Did we not cast out demons in your name? Did we not demonstrate that we were Christians all along?" And Jesus will say, "Depart from me, I never knew you." Contrast that with the sheep, which we're supposed to be. He will say, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your Lord, because you clothed me, you visited me in prison, you did all of these things. You cast out demons in my name." The sheep is going to look at him and go, "When did we do that? We're just doing what you told us to do." Which are you? Sheep or goat? This is BereanNation.com. Study the scriptures daily to see if these things are so.